All right. So in the last video, what we did, or in the last session, we focused on creating these new fields here, these new field types. We added them to our CRUD form. So we added like the price field, the integer field, the decimal field, the phone field, email field, all those kind of basic text fields, but they have like a little bit more like formatting or functionality to them. So those were kind of the simpler form fields that we were adding, the password, email, price, integer, decimal, phone number. And then we also have these file types of fields. So we're going to have a field for image where you can upload a single image, a field for images where you can upload multiple images, file where you can upload not just images but any file type. So imagine you wanted just to be able to upload, I don't know, like a PDF or a document or something. You would allow them to upload a file, and sitting there you can have multiple files uploaded. And so today's maybe going to be a little bit of a different session because it's not going to be so much maybe hands-on keyboard coding stuff. I actually have to kind of figure out what the implementation is going to look like for these field types. So like, what is it going to look like when we have an image upload field here, and then user selects that image, how do we save it, and then how does that image get stored with our collection item here that we create. And so what I'm going to be doing is kind of maybe scoping out what like the development implementation is going to look like. And I mean, I'm not sure if I'll actually get to coding it today, but for now I just kind of want to figure out what that looks like, and kind of show kind of the little process that I go through to kind of flesh out some of these features. And so what I usually do is I kind of have like this scratch section where I just create like a new document. It will allow me to just take notes, almost like disposable notes. So I'm not too concerned about making them look pretty or organized. This is just for me to kind of riff and improvise on just what I'm thinking through. So let's see here, image upload field, so I can write like notes here, thoughts that I'm having. And then what's cool about Notion is you can also do code blocks, and it's, it'll do code highlighting. So, it looks pretty and all that. But anyhow, that's kind of where I start. I also have, I use just a good old pen and paper sometimes. It's one of my favorite methods, just to jot down ideas. I need to figure out a way that I can actually show kind of what I'm writing on my notepad. I'm thinking maybe, I don't know, maybe eventually I'll get like an iPad or something where I can show what's on my iPad on the screen, so then you can kind of see what I'm jotting down. But I think for now, for this one, I'll be able to kind of do it all within this Notion notes app that I'm using. So just 1 second. All right. So what I'm thinking here is so the user is going to be able to, when they go here on the CRUD form, they're going to have the image field. And when they click to select an image, we'll have the file uploaded automatically. So as soon as they select it, it'll make that request to the backend server and store that file, as opposed to, just a regular form input image field that you select, but you actually have to click save in order for it to be sent to the server. And so what we're going to do is on the page, it's going to save that file in the backend, and it's going to return a file ID. I think what we'll do is so when user selects image, save the file through, an AJAX request in the background. Server responds with a file ID. And so the file ID is actually what we're going to be storing in our CRUD form. So, for like a regular text field, whatever we enter here, the value is what the user entered. For the file field, it's going to be a ID to the file. And so I'm thinking what we're going to do. So server responds with file ID. File ID is saved as the field value. For the files, what I'm thinking is we're going to have like a files database collection. And that's just going to have its normal ID. It's going to have like the file name, just call it name. And of course, created at, update at, that's going to come by default from Laravel. For now, that's really the only things that we need. And just to kind of give some context, my initial thought when I was kind of scoping out this first version, like if you look at some other standard CMS systems, they'll have like a media manager. Like if you look at WordPress, for example, they have like a media library, and this is like a central place that manages all your media. So you can go to this media library, you see all your files, you can update, edit, delete, and then WordPress even does have additional functionality where you can rotate, crop, flip, whatever. And originally I was thinking I'm going to implement like a media library feature in the CMS, but as I was thinking about it, I was realizing that's not really like that important of a feature. For this first version, we can actually get by without a media library, and it's not really going to impact the user's experience that much. And then down the line, that can be a feature that we add. And so what we're going to do is, so anytime they're uploading files, they're just going to have like the form where they're uploading the files is where they'll be managing those media files. There's not going to be the central media manager. But we will keep track of all the uploaded files in a database. And so what that will allow us to do is in the future, when or if we add a media manager, we'll be able to pull in those files from the database and display them in the media library. But either way, we're gonna have this database collection that keeps track of all the files that are updated, and then those files will be linked to the fields or wherever they're being pulled into. So yeah, that's just to give a little bit of context about how media files are going to be managed. So in essence, they're not really going to be managed. You're just going to be uploading them where you need them. And so, if you needed to replace them, you just go in there, replace it. For things like cropping, resizing, the user's just going to have to do that before they upload it, in Photoshop or whatever other software they're using. But yeah, so that's kind of high-level overview of how the image is going to work. So just to kind of review, the user is going to select an image. We're going to save that file in the backend. The backend is going to return the file ID to us, and we'll use that file ID and set it as a field value. And then when we need to retrieve the information about that file, we'll just get that file that has that ID, and we'll have the name of it, and we'll be able to pull it from our file storage. Now, how do we store files? So luckily in Laravel, Makes it pretty easy. I think ideally we're gonna want our files to be stored in something like Amazon S3. That's kind of the long-term solution that I'm thinking. And the benefit to that will also be that we'll be able to have the files backed by CDN. But of course, I don't really want to be hitting Amazon S3 locally. And so what I think what we can do is we might be able to create like a configuration for our file system. And the driver is going to be configured based on the like an env setting. So locally, we can have it be like a local file storage, and then you know, in production, it can be saved to S3. And so, you know, Laravel abstracts all the storage stuff using, you know, like the storage facade. And you'll see here, you can actually specify the disk that we want. So my thinking is we're gonna have like a disk named like media or something. And then that's gonna be configured to whatever driver we wanna use, whether it's S3, local file storage, whatever. And that's how we're gonna save files and retrieve files. All right, so just gonna take a look at the storage configuration file and see what kind of options we're going to need to configure in order to make this work. All right, so this is the file systems. You see by default, it uses the local disk. There's the public disk, and there's an S3 disk. So I think what we're gonna want something like a public disk, because so local storage, this actually gets saved to the storage app directory, and this is actually meant for, I guess, non-public use. But then like the public one actually exposes a URL, and I think the way that it works is like based on the documentation here, it creates like a symlink between the storage. Yeah, so you make a link, and then what it'll do is it'll make a symbolic link between public storage and storage.public. Another thing too is like, I'm thinking about this, we don't have to worry too much about what we're going to do for production, because, you know, that's kind of like, it is like a future problem, and I still don't know exactly how the app is going to be hosted in production, and so I don't want to be solving a problem prematurely. So we may be able to do something like use the public disk for now, and once we're getting ready to launch into production, we'll be able to, you know, add some configuration to make it use whatever disk we want to use. So like in previous company that I used to work for, what we did was I had this abstraction for, you know, it was like app models media file, and so within this file I had like this public, this one class file, I had this like public static function disk, right? And this just returned the disk that it should be using. So, you know, if it was production, well, actually, it was based on an environment variable, and so we did something like config, you know, CMS dot media disk. I forget exactly the configuration we used. And, you know, of course, the config would either return something like, you know, S3 or local or whatever. And what that allowed us to do would be, we'd do something like, you know, like storage. Well, the thing is, so we actually had other methods here. So we would do, you know, public function upload, like public function get or whatever. And so those would do something like, okay, actually, no, it's coming back to me. So we wouldn't return the configuration. We would actually return the actual like instance of that storage facade. So we would do something like return storage disk, and we pass in the configuration here, so then it's dynamic. So then we could do something like, you know, app models media file disk, and then we can run the, you know, whatever methods we wanted to on the, you know, storage. Like if we wanted to put a file, you know, we could do that. And this is dynamic, and what that allows us to do is, instead of having to do, you know, storage disk S3, or, you know, having to hard code storage disk local, this would be a dynamic call, and so whatever was configured is what is the disk it would use. So I kind of liked that approach. That kind of kept it easy and simple. So that's kind of what I'm thinking we'll do for production. Yeah, but I think for now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use the public disk. So we're just going to be doing something like storage disk local. I forget exactly what the methods are, put whatever we're going to use. And then once we're getting ready to go to production, there's not going to be very many places that use this specific call. You know, we're going to have maybe a few methods, and so we'll just be able to search our code base, find the usages of that. So that's going to be public. Find the usages of that, and then just replace it with something dynamic like this. But I don't want to get ahead of myself trying to build or configure something for production when I don't actually know what that's going to look like. But yeah, so so we have that. And then, so we know how we're going to store files. How do we upload files? So with uploading files, we're using Inertia for our front end, and what's nice about Inertia is it actually gives us some helpers for file uploads. And so let's see here, form data conversion. When making visits that include files, even nested files, Inertia will automatically convert the request data to a form data object. This is necessary since that's what's required to submit a multi-part form data request via XHR. If you'd like the visit to always use a form data object, you can force it. Okay. Here's an example of uploading a file with Inertia using a form. This example includes both a name input and an avatar file input. So I know that, so this is like if we were to do like a normal form submission, The only thing about our form is that we're not going to be submitting a form. So like this file upload field is going to be within a form, but we want that file upload to happen before that form is submitted. And so I'm honestly not sure if we can use inertia, just because with inertia, the way it works is like you make that request to the server, you return a response, but that response gets handled by inertia, and that's what like your next page load is. And we don't want it to do that that page load. We want it to kind of do more like an XHR request, with like fetch or maybe Axios. So I know I've kind of solved this in another prototype that I've done. Let me see what method I used here. Looking for an image field. So we have an image field at uploaded. We receive a file and we set that file to the form. So I kind of like that. I like this approach. I think we'll kind of do something similar where we'll have like an image field and we'll listen for an event. And then once that event happens, we'll be able to get that value and then do with it whatever we want, setting the form field value to it. So where is our image field? Here it is. Okay, yeah. So here we were using Axios, and I think that kind of makes the most sense. Yeah, I don't think something like inertia will work for us because we're not wanting to do like a form submit. We're just wanting to do like a XHR request to the backend and get a response and then do something with that response. So we'll use Axios to upload the file. And we can probably even like use this prototype that I built out before as like a starting point, because we even have things like progress here. It's kind of helpful, and just provides a good user experience to the users, kind of make sure that they know what's going on. Cool. So we know how the high level is going to work. We know how we're going to store the files. We know how we're going to send the files over to the backend. And then as far as like routes, so I think what we'll do is we'll have like a route, some like files that we can make a post request to. And it's going to process that file. As far as names, I'm actually a big fan of preserving the original file name that was uploaded, and this is especially helpful for even things like SEO, where the name, the keywords you have in the file name actually sometimes helps with your SEO if it's named appropriately. So if your image name kind of describes what the image is, that actually does help SEO in some ways. So, because one option is to just get rid of the original file name and just provide some kind of unique value, so each file is going to have just like this hash So that's a nice way to do it, because you don't have to worry about what the original file name is, because we just rename them all. But I think for this we actually want to preserve the names, and I think what we'll do is we'll use something like just str slug on the file name. That'll give us the name of the file, and then we just have to check for uniqueness. And so if a file was uploaded, the first file will be file.jpg. Second file will be file2.jpg, and then so on and so forth, file3.jpg. And so we're just gonna iterate through those, make sure that that file doesn't exist in database, and then if it does, well, we'll just append the new number to it. So I'll solve that. Yeah, so we're gonna upload the file. We're gonna generate a new name for it using the generate new name using str slug. Make sure file name is unique, and save it to our storage, return an instance of the file model. So this is going to be not the file itself, it's going to be the model that has the ID, the file name, so on and so forth. So then we can use that file ID in our form. All right, I like that so far. And yeah, as you can tell, like these notes, they're not very organized. I'm just kind of riffing and just jotting things down as it's coming to my mind. But it's just very helpful to kind of, jot down some ideas, write some sample code, kind of think through things, even have like some processes and stuff. And so when I'm kind of scoping out or shaping out these kinds of development features, this is kind of how I'll do it, for smaller things like this. For bigger things, it does take a little more time, and then what I'll do is I'll have like a scratch note like this, where I just jot down whatever comes to mind and kind of play around with ideas. And then if I need it to be more organized to make sure that everything makes sense, I'll actually create a new note and kind of organize all my thoughts into a better fashion. But it just kind of depends on the feature. Some features don't really warrant taking the time to organize it, just because it just kind of makes sense. You don't have to think too much through it. Other features, it's helpful to even build some diagrams or something, just to kind of have a visual representation of what's going on in your head. So I'll do that sometimes for some of the bigger features. But for this, like, I'm perfectly okay with this. Like, as I've kind of jotted all these things down, like, I can look through it and it makes sense to me. It's something that I can implement, and I think I've kind of covered all the different stages of this feature. So I think the last thing that I'm looking for is, what is it going to look like for the front end, like the actual UI portion of it. And I want to see if MUI supports any kind of file fields. File upload. Well, it was on their roadmap. Let's see if it was added at all. So it looks like there is not. Let's see here, planning to build. So they don't have a native file upload field. which is all right. Now that I'm thinking about it, yeah, it's not too big of a deal. The drop sum would be nice actually to have, because that'll allow people to just, drag files from their Finder window into, into the browser, and it'll just pick that up. But for now, I think kind of what I'm thinking about is, and this is actually where I'll use pen and paper. I wish I could show this, but I'll just kind of have like a button where you can select the file, and then once you select the file, what's going to happen is it's going to, I guess I'd even kind of show it here. So we have like select file. So imagine this is a button, and once you select the file, what's going to happen is it's going to add a new file here. So it's going to be like file.jpg, and it's going to have like a percentage, 0%. Eventually we'll probably have one of those neat little progress bars that'll show the file output progress, but once it uploads, it's going to look like file.jpg, and maybe it'll be green or something to indicate that it's been uploaded, and it's going to have like a delete button, something like that. Yeah, so that might be the first iteration. I think what we actually want, if we look at the Figma, content builder CRUD. So for the user interface, we actually want something like this. So, imagine that's the field name, and then the button. Once you click on the button, uploads a file. This is what it's going to look like when the file is uploaded. So you'll have, you still have the button to select the file, but the currently uploaded file will show here. It'll be like a little thumbnail preview, so you can see the file that was uploaded. And I'll have like an X or something so you can remove it. Actually, so this right here, that's going to be the remove button. And once, if you click remove, it'll remove it. You can upload a new one. Or you can just click to upload a new one, and it's just going to replace it once it's done uploading. Yeah, so that's what we'll do. So this is what we'll do currently. So when the file is uploading, it'll show the file name and like a percentage. Once it's done, it'll then show the image with a remove, with the remove button. So that's what it's going to look like for the image field. So yeah, and then we are going to have so images plural, so you'll be able to upload one image, and then you'll have like this component like this where you can select multiple images. Similar concept, but you can upload as many images as you want, really. It'll show a preview of all the uploaded images. You can remove them, and I think we'll also have the option to drag and drop to sort them. But yeah, but first we'll focus on uploading or adding the single file upload field, and then we'll focus on creating one where you can upload multiple images. And files, going to be a similar concept here, where you'll have a single file upload field. Instead of an image preview, it's just going to have the file name, just because, with a little icon. but like no preview, because yeah, I don't know if that would be able to do previews. And then same thing here with the multiple file upload field. You know, you can upload multiple files, delete them if you need them, if you need to, drag and drop to sort probably. But yeah, yeah, overall I'm feeling pretty good about this. I think, you know, at this point I'd be good enough or at a point to start implementing it. So yeah, for a lot of my features, this is kind of what I do when I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to implement it. I'll just kind of go through this process where I'll have a little scratch notepad where I'll just jot down what I'm thinking, have like a high level overview of what I'm thinking, break it down into all the different steps, how it's going to work, you know, have like simple little mock-ups like this that kind of you know, represent what it's gonna look like. And yeah, it's just at this point it's ready to go. You know, I'm sure as I start developing it, I might encounter some issues, and you know, we'll might have to adjust as we go. But my goal here is to be able to kind of have almost like have a plan. You know, I don't want to just be taking a stab at it and stumbling my way across. I kind of want to have some kind of framework in mind of like, hey, this is kind of what I'm aiming towards. And then if we do encounter some speed bumps, you know, some roadblocks, we'll find ways around them. But we've kind of figured out the solution to the main problem here. So yeah, that's really what I wanted to do for this live stream, is kind of figure out how I'm going to do the image or the image upload field. I'm not going to get to coding it on this stream. But yeah, this is good progress. Yeah, and hopefully on the next stream I'll be able to show how it's going to be implemented. I don't know if I'll do a stream of me implementing it, or if I'm going to do that offline, but that's where we'll be next time. All right, well, I'm out.